remember the exact moment everything changed. The sound of my phone ringing, the way my name lit up on her screen instead of hers. And then, her voice, cold, calculated, like she was holding back something heavy. "Myra," she said, "we need to talk." That's all it took. 3 words, and I felt it, that old familiar pull in my chest. The same one I thought I had outgrown. The pull of guilt, obligation, and the kind of love that only ever seemed to flow one way. Before I go on, I want to ask you something. If you've ever loved someone so deeply that it broke you, if you've ever been torn between your own peace and someone else's expectations, then stay with me till the end. Because this story, this quiet confession, might just make you see your own reflection in the places you least expect. And if it does, please like this video, subscribe, and stay until the very end. Because some stories aren't just told, they're felt, so let's begin. I hadn't heard from my mother in months. Not since I moved out of that small, crumbling house on the outskirts of Karachi, the one that always smelled like fried onions and old rainwater leaking through the roof. That house carried years of silence, the kind that hums louder than any words. When I left, I thought I was leaving the silence behind. But some silences follow you. It's strange how success makes people notice you again. For years I worked quietly. Long nights, cheap tea, and hands that shook after every deadline. I was the forgotten child, the responsible one, the one who would understand. My brother Raza was the golden boy. He never had to try. Everything was given, paid for, excused, and forgiven. And me? I was the apology that held the family together. I was the, "You're older, you should know better." When my mother called that day, her voice carried that same old authority wrapped in false sweetness. She never asked how I was. She didn't ask about my new apartment, or the marketing agency I had finally opened after years of struggle. No, she asked how much I was earning now. I hesitated, not because I didn't want to tell her, but because I knew what would come next. Still, I told her, a small mistake, a simple truth that changed everything. She showed up 3 days later, unannounced, at my door, and she didn't come alone. Raza was with her, my spoiled, careless, always angry brother, the boy who once threw a tantrum because his shoes were the wrong brand. Now a man, if you could call him that, jobless, entitled, with eyes that darted around my apartment as if it all belonged to him. "Myra, you've done well for yourself," my mother said, looking around with an approving smirk. Her words should have sounded proud, but they didn't. They sounded like calculation. I made tea, the same way she used to. 3 spoons of sugar, 1 of bitterness. We sat there, pretending to be a family again. But the air was thick, like it used to be when my father was still alive, and silence was our way of surviving him. Finally, she said it. Her voice so calm it almost sounded rehearsed. "Myra, you know your brother's been struggling. He's had some bad luck. And as his sister, I know you'll want to help." I looked at Raza. He was scrolling through his phone. "Didn't even look up. Help?" I asked. "What kind of help?" My mother leaned forward, fingers clutching her purse like it contained her heart. "You have your own business now. You're earning well. It's time you gave back to family." There it was. The word that always haunted me. Family. The weapon that kept me obedient all my life. I tried to explain that I had loans, that I was still building, that things weren't as easy as they looked, but my mother's eyes hardened. "You always have excuses," she said. "We did everything for you, fed you, raised you, and now you think you're too good for us?" Her words hit me like old bruises reopening, and Raza, he just smirked. "Yeah, Myra, it's not like you're married or anything. What are you even saving for?" That sentence, it tore something inside me. Because for years, my worth in that house was tied to what I could sacrifice. My education? Delayed for him. My clothes? Always secondhand so he could have new ones. My peace? Gone. So theirs could be undisturbed. And now, after all these years of clawing my way out of that cycle, they came knocking, with the same expectations wrapped in guilt. That night, after they left, I sat by the window. It was raining, the kind of soft drizzle that makes you think of memories you wish you'd forgotten. I thought about how far I'd come. The woman who used to hide her tears behind bathroom doors now had her own office, her own nameplate, her own peace. But that peace felt fragile. Like a glass I was too scared to touch. For days after, my mother kept calling. Sometimes crying, sometimes angry, sometimes silent. Raza started texting me too. "Hey sis, just a little help." "Come on, you know Mom will be upset if you don't." "Don't be selfish. Selfish." That word, it burned, because for years I was everything but that. The breaking point came one Sunday. I was working late, finalizing a pitch for a new client that could change everything for my company. And then, my doorbell rang. Again. When I opened it, they were there. My mother, eyes red from fake tears, and Raza carrying 2 suitcases. I froze. "What are you doing here?" She brushed past me like she owned the place. "Raza will stay here for a while, until he gets back on his feet. You can help him find a job, right?" My stomach dropped. "Mom, you can't just..." But she was already unpacking his things on my couch. Raza kicked off his shoes, turned on the TV, and said, "Thanks, sis. You're a lifesaver," I wanted to scream, but I didn't. Because old habits die slow. And my habit was silence. The next few weeks were unbearable. Raza treated my home like a hotel. He slept all day, went out all night, and used my car without asking. My groceries disappeared. My laundry doubled. My peace. Gone. My mother would visit every few days pretending to check on us. But really, she was checking on me. Checking if I was still obedient. Still that quiet little girl who wouldn't say no. And for a while, I wasn't. Because every time I tried, her voice echoed. "Don't forget where you came from. Don't shame this family. You owe us." Oh. That word felt like chains around my heart. But then something shifted. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, almost invisible. One night I came home late from a meeting. My kitchen was a mess. Empty pizza boxes, cigarette butts in the sink. And Raza, sitting there with 2 of his friends, laughing, drinking the expensive wine I'd saved for a client dinner. Something in me snapped. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I just looked at him. Really looked at him. The boy who used to steal my savings. The man who blamed the world for every bad thing in his life. And suddenly, I saw it all clearly. My whole life had been a mirror I held up for others to see themselves in. My needs never reflected. That night, I quietly walked to my room, closed the door, and locked it. I sat on the edge of my bed and whispered to myself, "No more." The next morning, I called a locksmith. Changed the locks, on the front door, and on my heart. When my mother showed up later that week, angry, shouting, demanding, I didn't open the door. She banged and cursed, telling the whole building I was an ungrateful daughter. I just stood behind the door, tears falling silently, but my hands steady. When she finally left, I sat on the floor, the echo of her voice fading into something else. Peace. Days turned into weeks, and for the first time in my life, I heard something new. The sound of my own breathing. I started waking up earlier, walking to the park, feeling the morning air on my face. I began journaling, writing the words I never said out loud. Forgiveness doesn't mean returning. Love doesn't mean debt. Family shouldn't feel like fear. Each line felt like a small rebellion. A soft revenge, and then success came again. Not because of them, but despite them. My agency won a huge contract. My name was printed in a magazine for women entrepreneurs to watch. People started calling me by my full name again, Myra Khan. Not Raza's sister, not Mrs. Khan's daughter. Just me. One evening I got a text from Raza. "Congrats on the magazine thing. Mom showed me. Guess you finally made it." There was something in his tone. Something that wasn't pride. Maybe envy. Maybe regret. But I didn't reply. Some silences are not empty. They're full of boundaries. Now, when I think back, I don't hate them. Not anymore. I pity them. Because they never learned the freedom of standing alone. They never learned that love built on guilt will always collapse under its own weight. And me? I learned, I grew. I chose myself, for the first time in my life. So if you're listening right now, and someone is using love as a leash, walk away. Because the ones who truly love you don't demand your wings just to feel tall. It's strange how peace never announces when it's about to end. It just slips away, quietly, like a guest leaving in the middle of the night. I thought I had closed that chapter of my life for good. The chapter where I was the daughter who gave too much and the sister who never received enough. But peace. It doesn't just get stolen. Sometimes it's tested, and my test began the day I opened my front door and found my mother standing there again. This time, she didn't come with luggage. She came with a purpose, and it was written all over her face. Myra, she said softly, as if my name was something fragile she wasn't sure how to hold. I hadn't seen her in almost 6 months. She looked older, tired. Her hair, once carefully dyed, was streaked with gray. For a second, just a second, the part of me that still loved her wanted to reach out, to ask if she was okay. But then she spoke again. "Can I come in?" I hesitated. Everything in me screamed no. But the child inside me, the one who still craved her approval, stepped aside. She walked in like she never left. Sat on the same sofa she once criticized for being too expensive for someone unmarried. Looked around, nodded. "You've done well for yourself?" I smiled faintly. "Thanks." The silence that followed was sharp. She wasn't here to catch up. I could feel it. And then she said the words that made my chest tighten. "Myra, your brother is in trouble." For a moment I couldn't breathe. Of course this was about him again. It always was. What kind of trouble? I asked quietly. Her eyes darted away. He had got involved with some people. Business gone wrong. They're demanding money. How much? She hesitated. 5 lakh rupees. I felt the air leave my lungs. 5 lakh? She nodded. They're threatening him, Myra, please. You have to help. There it was again. The same script, the same plea, the same manipulation wrapped in motherly desperation. I tried to stay calm. "Mom, I can't. I already helped him enough." I offered him a job once. He refused. He doesn't want help. He wants shortcuts. She looked at me, eyes glistening with tears. "You're his sister. You can't turn your back on him." And then she said it. The one line that ripped through me like glass. "If your father were alive, he'd be ashamed of you." The room fell silent. Her words echoed against the walls like old ghosts. My father. The man who raised his hand more than his voice. The man whose approval I chased until the day he died. And even in death, he was used against me. I stood up slowly. "Please don't say that." She looked at me with the same expression she used to wear when I'd cry as a little girl, like my pain was a performance she'd already grown bored of. "Myra, I didn't come here to fight. I came because your brother needs us. If we don't help him, he could be hurt. You have the means, I don't." I stared at her. This woman who birthed me, who taught me to pray, who taught me shame before she taught me love. "Mom," I whispered, "I can't fix what he refuses to take responsibility for." Her eyes hardened. "You think your money makes you better than us?" "No," I said softly. "It just means I finally stopped begging." She left without another word. And for the first time in my life, I didn't run after her. I didn't apologize, I just let her go. But peace, like I said, doesn't last forever. 3 days later, I was leaving my office when a strange man approached me. Rough voice, stained teeth, cigarette smell thick around him. "You Myra Khan?" I froze. "Yes." He smirked. "Your brother owes us money. He said you'd take care of it." My heart dropped. "What?" He handed me a crumpled piece of paper, an address, a number, and one sentence scrawled in blue ink. "Family helps family." I felt my world spin. That night, I didn't sleep. Every knock on the wall, every sound from the street, I thought they'd come. For me. For him. I called my mother the next morning, voice trembling. "Where is Raza?" She sounded tired. I don't know. He doesn't answer my calls either. Something in her tone made me realize she wasn't scared for him. She was scared of him, and suddenly I understood everything. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about control, about how far they could push me before I broke again. 2 days later, I got another call. Raza this time. Myra, hey, don't freak out, okay? He laughed nervously. I just need a little cash to make things right. Raza, stop. You dragged me into your mess. Those people came to my office. Yeah, I know. I told them you'd handle it. What? Relax, they just want their money. You can cover it. You make enough now. I went silent. My fingers trembled around the phone. All the years of swallowing my voice, of cleaning his mistakes, they rose up inside me like fire. Raza, I whispered. You told them I'd pay for you? Come on, you're my sister. Don't be dramatic. Dramatic? The word cracked something inside me. I laughed. Soft, bitter, broken laughter. I used to think I was your sister, but you only see me as a bank account that happens to share your blood. Before he could reply, I ended the call and blocked his number. That night, I sat by the window again. Same chair, same city lights, same quiet ache, but this time something was different. The fear I used to feel and was gone. In its place was a strange calm, like a storm that had finally decided to pass. I realized people only take from you what you allow them to, and I had allowed too much for too long. So the next morning, I did something I never thought I'd do. I went to the police, filed a report about the threats, gave them Raza's name, and when they asked if I was sure, I said yes. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done. Because it wasn't about punishment, it was about release. Days turned into weeks. I didn't hear from them. No calls, no knocks, no notes. And then one Sunday morning, I got a message. From my mother. It said, "He's in the hospital. Come if you still care." My chest tightened. My hands shook. But I went, because no matter how much someone hurts you, a part of you still hopes they'll be okay. When I walked into the hospital room, Raza was lying there, bandaged, pale, eyes half open. He looked small, so small. My mother sat beside him, crying quietly. When she saw me, her expression was unreadable. "You're here," she said. "Yes," she looked away. "They beat him up. Over the money." I told him to stop, but he wouldn't listen. Raza turned his head slowly toward me. His voice was barely a whisper. "I thought they'd leave me alone if they knew you'd pay." Something inside me cracked. Not from anger this time, but sorrow. Because I saw it then, the brokenness beneath his arrogance. The child our father had favored, the son my mother had protected so fiercely, had never learned how to stand on his own. He wasn't my enemy. He was my mother's creation, and her love had destroyed him. I sat down beside him, my eyes stinging. "Raza," I said softly, "I can't fix this for you, but I hope someday you'll fix it for yourself." He didn't reply, just looked away, ashamed. I stood, looked at my mother. For once, she didn't have anything to say. No guilt, no blame, just silence, and I realized sometimes silence isn't empty. Sometimes it's surrender. That night, I went home and cried. Not because I was hurt, but because I was free. I thought about all the years I tried to earn love that was never meant for me. And I realized something beautiful. I didn't need their approval to feel whole anymore. I didn't need their voices to validate mine. I was finally living my own story. Weeks later, I got another call. This time from my mother again. Her tone was softer, almost unfamiliar. "Myra," she said quietly, "I wanted to thank you for showing up." I didn't know what to say. It wasn't an apology, but it was something. A small crack in the wall between us. She hesitated before adding, "Your brother is leaving the city. Maybe it's for the best." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Yes, maybe it is. When I hung up, I felt it, that quiet peace again. But this time, I knew how to protect it. I didn't hear from them for months after that, and I didn't chase them. I learned to fill my silence with softer things. Music, books, laughter that didn't feel guilty. I started volunteering on weekends, helping women who were trying to rebuild their lives after leaving toxic families or relationships. One woman told me, "You talk like someone who's been through fire." I smiled. Maybe. But I learned how to walk through it without burning anymore. Sometimes late at night, I'd wonder if they ever thought about me. If Raza missed his sister, if my mother ever replayed the things she said, but I didn't linger there. Because the past, no matter how loud, has no power over a heart that has learned peace. And yet, just when I thought the story was over, life reminded me that closure isn't always clean. Because one day, out of nowhere, my mother called again. But this time her voice wasn't cold. It was trembling. "Fragile, Myra," she whispered. "I need your help." I froze. For a moment I couldn't speak. "Mom? What's wrong?" She took a deep breath. "I can't say over the phone. Please, can you come home?" Home. That word again. The place where it all began. I didn't know then that this visit would change everything. I still remember the drive back to that house. The same cracked road. The same dust swirling around the edges of the street. The same mango tree out front, still leaning toward the sunlight like it refused to give up. I hadn't been there in over a year. And yet, every corner whispered memories. The laughter I faked, the tears I swallowed, the woman I used to be. When I parked outside, I sat for a long time in the car, watching the curtains flutter against the window. There was a heaviness in my chest I couldn't name. It wasn't fear, it wasn't guilt. It was finality. I didn't know it then, but I was walking into a goodbye. When I opened the gate, my mother was waiting at the door. She looked smaller somehow, thinner. Her shoulders sagged like they'd been carrying invisible weights for too long. "Myra," she said softly, and for the first time in my life, she sounded human. Not sharp, not commanding, just tired. I stepped inside. The house smelled the same, like dust and old flowers and something faintly bitter, like nostalgia that refused to fade. She guided me to the living room. And there he was, Raza. He was sitting quietly, his head lowered. No arrogance, no smirk. Just silence, the kind that made my heart ache. I looked at him, then at her. "What's going on?" She hesitated. "Sit down, Myra." "Please." I sat. She clasped her hands together, her knuckles trembling. "I know I haven't been fair to you, and I know I've said things that no mother should say." Her voice broke. And for a second, I didn't recognize her. She took a deep breath. "Your brother's leaving the country. He found a small job in Dubai, construction. It's not much, but it's something. He'll be gone next week." I glanced at Raza. He still hadn't looked up. "That's good," I said quietly. "It's a start." She nodded. But her eyes, they carried something else. Fear, maybe. Regret. Then she reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. "I wanted to give you this." Inside were a few old photographs. Our family, years ago. Me as a child, holding a birthday cake. Raza beside me, grinning with his mouth full of missing teeth. My father's hand resting on his shoulder. Not mine. And on the back of one photo, written in my mother's neat, slanted handwriting, was a line that made my breath catch. "I'm sorry I made you feel unseen." I stared at those words for a long time. They weren't enough, but they were something. I looked at her, and for the first time, I saw not the woman who raised me, but the girl she must have once been, trapped by her own fears, her own learned ways of love. Maybe she didn't know better. Maybe she never had a chance to. "Mom," I whispered. "I forgive you." The words slipped out before I even thought them through. And the moment they did, I felt lighter. Like a chain I didn't even realize I was wearing had just fallen away. Raza finally looked up. His eyes were red, his face thinner than I remembered. "I don't deserve forgiveness," he said quietly. I didn't argue, because sometimes silence is the only honest response. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small folded note. "I wrote this for you." It was a short apology, shaky handwriting, smudged ink. He wrote that he was sorry for using me, sorry for hating me just because I succeeded where he failed, sorry for calling me selfish when I was the only one who ever cared enough to stay. I didn't say much. I just nodded. Then I did something I never thought I would. I hugged him. Not because I forgot what he did, but because I didn't want to carry his mistakes anymore. We talked for a long time that evening, not as enemies, not even as siblings, just as two broken people trying to find a way forward. He told me he wanted to start over, that Dubai wasn't forever, but he needed to see who he was without my mother's protection. And when he said that, I saw something flicker in my mother's eyes. Pride, maybe. Or maybe just realization. The world she had built around her favorite child was collapsing. And all that was left was truth. As the evening fell, I stepped outside to get some air. The sun was setting, painting the sky in bruised shades of orange and gold. It looked like healing. Messy, beautiful, unfinished. My mother came out quietly, standing beside me. We didn't speak for a while. Then she said softly, "When your father died, I was so scared. I didn't know how to raise you both alone. Raza reminded me of him, confident, loud, impossible. And you," she paused, "you reminded me of myself. Quiet, careful, always waiting for permission to breathe. And I hated seeing that. So I tried to change you. I thought I was helping." Tears slipped down her face. "I didn't realize I was breaking you instead." I turned to her, my voice steady. "You didn't break me, Mom. You taught me how to rebuild." We stood there until the sky turned dark, and for the first time in years, there was peace between us. Not the fake kind that comes from fear, but the real kind, born from truth. When I left that night, she hugged me. A real hug, not out of obligation, but out of something raw and human. She whispered, "Take care of yourself, Myra." I smiled through tears. "I will." A week later, Raza left for Dubai. He called once from the airport, his voice shaking. "Thank you, sis, for not giving up on me, even when I didn't deserve it." I wished him well. And after we hung up, I sat by the window again, the same one where I once whispered no more. Except this time, it wasn't a declaration. It was gratitude. Months passed. Life moved forward. My business grew. I started mentoring young women from small towns, teaching them about financial independence, how to stand on their own without guilt or apology. One day, I was invited to give a talk at a women's conference. The theme was redefining family. I stood on that stage, looking at faces filled with stories they hadn't told yet. And I said, family is not just who you're born to, it's who you heal with. It's who makes space for your voice instead of silencing it. And sometimes, family is the person you become when you finally choose yourself. The audience was quiet for a long moment. Then came the applause, not loud, but warm, like understanding. After the talk, as I was leaving, a young woman stopped me. She had tears in her eyes. "Myra," she said, "I left home last month. I thought I'd never find peace again. But your story, it made me believe I could." I smiled, because I knew that feeling, that fragile hope, that first breath of freedom. I touched her shoulder and said, "You already found peace. You just have to stop asking permission to keep it." Life has a strange way of returning what you once lost, but in gentler forms. Raza started sending me pictures from Dubai. Nothing grand, just moments. Him working under the sun, sharing tea with new friends, smiling, and my mother. She started calling once a week. Not to ask for money, not to compare, just to talk. Sometimes she'd ask about my work, sometimes about the weather. Sometimes she'd just say, "I'm proud of you." And every time she said it, I'd feel that little girl inside me smile, the one who waited years to hear those words. One evening, months later, I visited her again. She was sitting in the garden, knitting quietly. The same hands that once pointed in accusation now moved softly, gently weaving warmth. She looked up and smiled. "You always loved this garden," she said. "I did," I replied. It was the only place that felt honest. We talked for hours, about my childhood, about regrets, about healing. And then, before I left, she said something I'll never forget. "Myra, thank you for not becoming me." I froze. Then I hugged her again. Longer this time. Because sometimes, the deepest love comes from the people who finally learn how to say sorry. That night, as I drove home, the city lights blurred against my window. And I thought about everything. The pain, the betrayal, the silence, the forgiveness. If someone had told me years ago that peace would come from letting go, I would have laughed. Because I used to think letting go meant losing. But now I know. It means choosing. Choosing peace over pride. Freedom over fear. Love without conditions. Now, when I sit by my window, I still hear echoes of the past sometimes. My father's voice, my mother's scolding, my brother's laughter. But they don't hurt anymore. They're just reminders of who I used to be and who I've become. The woman who was once told she owed her family everything finally realized she didn't owe them her peace, and that realization was the quietest revenge of all. So if you're listening right now, and you're holding on to someone who keeps breaking you, I hope you know this. Walking away doesn't make you ungrateful. Setting boundaries doesn't make you cruel. And choosing yourself doesn't make you selfish. It makes you free. Because love, real love, doesn't demand. It understands. And peace. Peace doesn't need to be earned. It just needs to be allowed. When I close my eyes now, I don't see that house anymore. I see sunlight. A small apartment filled with laughter and plants and music that I chose. I see my reflection. Steady, soft, alive. My mother still calls sometimes. We talk about recipes, small things, the weather. There's no more anger, no more guilt. Just two women learning how to love each other differently. And Raza. He sends postcards. From Dubai, from Oman. Sometimes just a few words. "Doing better, sis." That's all. And it's enough. Because healing doesn't mean perfect relationships. It means peace, even with imperfect people. So here I am now, telling you my story. Not for pity, not for praise, but for the girl I used to be. And maybe for the girl you used to be too. Because somewhere between losing them and finding myself, I realized something. The love I was searching for all my life was never in their approval. It was in my own reflection. And that love is finally enough.